All right, let's talk about something we've all struggled with: time. Specifically, how to manage it on a project. We're going to dive into project schedule management and figure out exactly how to build a rock-solid blueprint for getting things done on time, every time.
I mean, seriously, why is that? It's the million-dollar question. You start a project, you're excited, the deadline looks totally doable, and then, boom, delays. It happens over and over, so what's the deal? Well, it almost always comes down to the plan you start with.
Think about it like building a house. You wouldn't just show up with a truck full of wood and start hammering away, right? Of course not. You need a detailed blueprint. And in project management, our blueprint, the thing that tells us what to do and when, that's the schedule. It is the master plan.
So here's how we're going to build this blueprint together. We'll look at why projects go off the rails. Then we'll get into the fun stuff, drawing the master plan, listing out and ordering all the tasks, figuring out how long it'll all take, creating that final schedule, and then, the really important part, making sure we actually stay on track.
Okay, first things first. Before we even think about a single task, we have to draw the blueprint for the blueprint. Sounds a little weird, I know, but it's like setting the rules for the construction site. We're deciding how we're going to plan and manage time before we get into the nitty-gritty.
And this right here, this is the whole game plan. These are the 6 big steps from start to finish. But here's what I want you to notice. Look at how much work happens before you even have a final schedule. The magic is all in the prep work. If you nail these early steps, you're setting yourself up for success.
All right, we've got our rules. Now, let's figure out what we actually need to do. This is where we take the big chunks of the project, the pros call them work packages, and we slice them up into smaller, bite-sized activities. And then we have to figure out the right order to do them in.
You don't need to plan every single nail you're going to hammer in the roof when you haven't even poured the foundation yet. That's the whole idea behind something called rolling wave planning. You get super detailed about the work that's happening right now, but you keep the later stuff at a higher level. It keeps things flexible, it's smart. And when you're putting tasks in order, you find there are basically 2 types of rules. Some things are mandatory, right? Hard logic. You just can't build the walls before the foundation is poured. But other things are discretionary. You could paint the bedroom or the living room first. It's a choice. Knowing the difference is what gives you wiggle room later on.
So we know what we need to do and we know the order to do it in. Now for the really tricky part, how long is each little thing going to take? This is where planning becomes both an art and a science.
Now, instead of just guessing one number, the pros use a really cool technique called 3-point estimating. It makes you think through the options. What's the best case scenario if everything goes perfectly? What's the worst case, everything is on fire scenario? And what's, most likely to happen? It gives you a way more honest answer.
So let's give it a shot. Let's say we're installing kitchen cabinets. Okay, the optimistic view, if the stars align and everything's perfect, we could knock it out in 2 days.
Then there's the most likely. This is your gut feeling, based on experience. Realistically, it's probably going to take about 3 days.
And finally, we got to face the pessimistic view. What if the wrong cabinets get delivered or someone calls in sick? Man, this could drag on for 7 days.
So, how do we get one solid number from those 3? We use this formula, often called PERT. Now, don't let the math scare you. Look at the key part. It multiplies that most likely number by 4. It gives it way more weight than the crazy best case or worst case scenarios. So for our cabinets, we get a much more believable estimate of 3.5 days. Okay, we've got our tasks, we've got the sequence, and we have solid time estimates. Now, it's time to put it all together. This is where we assemble the puzzle and our final project schedule really comes to life.
And the number one tool for this is called the critical path method. So imagine all your tasks laid out end to end. The critical path is simply the longest chain of tasks from start to finish. It's the absolute minimum time your project is going to take, assuming everything goes to plan.
And this is the part you really have to understand. Any delay, I'm talking even a few hours, on any task on that critical path will push back your final deadline. There is 0 room for error on this path. It's what keeps project managers up at night. So what happens if your critical path is just too long for your deadline? Well, you've got 2 main levers to pull, and each one has a price. You can crash it, which basically means throwing money at the problem, hiring more people, buying faster equipment. Or you can fast-track it, which means doing some tasks at the same time that you plan to do one after another. That doesn't cost more money, but boy, does it increase your risk.
A blueprint is totally useless if you just draw it up and then toss it in a drawer. The final piece of the puzzle, and you could argue it's the most important, is controlling that schedule. It's the day-to-day work of making sure the real world is matching the plan.
And to do that, project managers have a whole box of tools. We won't go into all of them, but you'll hear terms like earned value analysis or burn-down charts. All these fancy tools have one simple goal: to tell you if you're on track, to help you spot trouble before it happens, and to always, always keep an eye on that critical path. So if you take away one thing from all this, let it be this: a schedule is not a crystal ball. It's not supposed to perfectly predict the future. It's a GPS. It calculates the best route to get where you're going, and when you inevitably hit some unexpected traffic, it helps you recalculate and find a new way to get there on time.
So that's the whole process. By setting the rules, defining and sequencing the work, estimating it honestly, and then actively managing that plan, you create a powerful, living guide for your project. You turn a hopeful wish into a concrete plan. So now that you have the blueprint, what are you going to build?